Thank you guys for your patience. Councilman Harvell's not here. We're just trying to check to see if he's doing okay and to see if he's going to join us. But we're not able to get in touch with him right now, so we're going to go ahead with our meeting this evening. We have a quorum. So at this time, we'll call our meeting to order. We'll ask everyone to stand for the invocation. Bow our heads. Lord, we just thank you so much for all you have blessed us with, and we just thank you for smiling on our town and all the good things that you have going on in our town. We just praise you for all the citizens that are participating in everything that we're doing here locally. Lord, we just really feel your presence among us, and we just thank you for your kindness toward us. We ask that you would guide us and lead us in our discussions tonight and the business of the town, and everything that we do will be according to your will. That's just in Jesus' name. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. We'll consider a motion for approval of the minutes from our last meeting on October the 5th.
Mayor, I move there is no changes to be made to the minutes, that they be accepted as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Haygood, second by Councilman Alexander. All in favor? All motions are approved. Minutes approved. Thank you very much. At this time, we'll hear any public comments.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I know each one of you personally, but for the record, my name is John Roach. My family was approached by a real estate company that was working with Walmart in 2012 about property on Highway 20, just outside of city limits. We all worked together to try and get Walmart to build here in Williamston. Part of that deal led us to annex our property into Williamston in late 2013 or early 2014. As everyone knows, the deal never actually came to fruition. For the last 6 years, we've continued to pay city taxes on property that was annexed for a deal that fell through. I mentioned this to you a few years ago, and you agreed the council could vote to remove our property from the city limits. Mayor Durham, I would also say that having our property in the city limits makes your business property contiguous. I have also mentioned this to you in passing. As you run for re-election, you talk about how great it is to be part of Williamston and to do business in Williamston with you as mayor. If this is true, can you ask the council to annex your property by the 100% petition and ordinance method as outlined in the Municipal Association of South Carolina? You currently have town trash cans behind your building. The Williamston Fire Department and Police Department responded when there was a fire at your business that you do not pay city taxes on. What message does this send to the voters? Mayor, I would ask that you propose to remove our property from the city limits or ask council right now to annex yours in.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is Jan Washington. I'm a retired citizen here in Williamston. I lived here most of my life, raised my kids here. I have a lot on Jehu Street in East Carolina, where I've had a mobile home most of the time there. But for the last 15 years, I haven't had anything there. And I'm retired now. And I wanted to know what my option was about putting a modular or a double wide or some kind of guidance on what I can do there. So I come before the council asking you all what I can or cannot do, and I have water and sewage already there.
Right. That would be a request through the town to put an appropriate structure on that property, and that would be approved. If there's any question, you can have recourse through the Zoning Appeals Board, but that's the process that we would go through to decide what kind of structure you're putting on that property. But it would have to meet certain guidelines.
Okay, well, I was thinking a modular home.
And modular homes are accepted in the town limits.
Okay, so that would be fine.
Yes, modular homes are fine.
And I still need to contact you all
You'll have to get your-
business-wise.
Yes, ma'am, you have to get your permits and everything, but modular homes are considered the same as stick-built homes.
Okay, all right, thank you, that
You dropped
helps me out a lot.
Yes, ma'am, you dropped something.
And Mayor, if I may ask, can I give her the information, well, get her connected with Debbie, and Debbie can give her all the information that she needs and.
Absolutely.
All right. I'll let that go too.
All right, appreciate it.
Yes,
All right,
ma'am.
thank you.
Mayor, council, we've been having lots of trouble over on Gray Drive. And the traffic, we've had, Mr. Harp's come over there, he's got several people stopped over there, and some of the others. They're not, quick as they go on, it starts back up. And the backpacks and the guys walking, and they know that they're doing drugs because they're going right up to the drug house and coming back down. But the speed, what scares me, there's 4 little kids right next door, actually where Rocky used to live. And I'm just afraid they're going to run out one day when them cars come by, and when them little kids are going to get killed. And when it happens, it's too late. But that being said, I went over on Church Street the other day by pure accident. I missed my road, and there were speed bumps up there. Why can we not put speed bumps ever so often down Gray Drive to slow some of this traffic down?
We can certainly look at that. We looked at several alternatives on Church Street, and we tried several things, and we had some effect, but we felt like we needed to do something more, so
Yeah.
that's why those were installed. So we'll be glad to look at Gray Drive.
Some of those cars, the music's so loud, and they hang out the window, you just wouldn't believe. And my neighbors, if they out in the yard, they run up to the end of your yard and holler at them, or they're going to turn around and come back and do something to one of the neighbors. Some of these guys, they don't realize what they're dealing with. So if we can go in that effect and consider speed bumps up through there every so often, because I know, and this sounds unreal, but if anybody had backed out of their yard when several had been coming down through there, they'd went slap through the car. That's how fast they were going. I don't know how they got stopped up there at the bridge. So we need to do something about the speed and everything. And that being said, my hairdresser over on Mahaffey, she couldn't be here because they were afraid that her husband got tested for COVID. So she asked me to ask this. She had been talking to several neighbors about the little subdivision that's going to be put in. She said, I wish you would ask the mayor and council. Said all of us like this country effect out here, and said when they poke that subdivision in there right up beside her beauty shop, half of them over there's wanting to move. They said it ain't going to be like a country down through there no more when they start putting those there. And nobody knew about it, they said, until they read it in the paper. And they did intend to come tonight, but I told them I would be glad to mention it to you, their concerns.
If you have her number, I'll be glad to call.
I will have to look it up. I'll get it to one of y'all,
Okay, thanks.
because I don't have it with me. It's her cell number, and I'll look it up.
No problem.
May I address Pam on this one as well, for just a second?
This is public comment.
I realize that. You've had dialogue with...
Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Pam, tonight what's happening is second reading of an ordinance that will basically give the town property to a developer with a mortgage being taken out. And that will not go into effect until in other words, no construction or anything can take place until we see some engineered site plans, at which time the residents can look at that and say, yeah, we like that, or no, we don't like that at all.
So tonight, even though it's second reading, it's still not a done deal, so just keep that in mind. I've had some of the same concerns with knocking on doors at election time, and some folks have told me the same thing, so thank you.
So what would she do to, or when will she know?
Let me address that, Pam. The process that we put in place is to go ahead and have the property in position to be transferred to the developer. And this gives them enough commitment by the town to go ahead and spend money on doing engineered plans for the development. This will cost a good bit for them to do that. But those plans will go to the planning commission, who will have public meetings, and people can come in and have any comments about that development that they'd like to during that process. And it will not come back before council for final reading until all that is discussed.
Okay, so she just needs to wait to,
She needs to plan to participate in the planning commission meetings when they start to review the actual plans. We're just trying to get this to the next step so the public can be involved.
okay. And if y'all would please consider our street on Gray Drive.
Sure.
And we do have potholes there. It always sounds like somebody's coming through my picture window to watch TV or something, you know, that's wham, wham, every day. And you can imagine fast as they go what it's going to be like. And so if y'all can take a look at that too, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
I think we're going to go. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you for your public comment this evening. We appreciate hearing from the citizens. And we'll move on now to our guests. We'd like to recognize, we have a lot of our, bulk of our legislative delegation with us this evening. We really do appreciate you guys visiting with us, appreciate all the work that you do for us. We have Representative Ann Thayer from our South Carolina State representation. We have Senator Mike Gambrell, also from our state representation, and Ms. Cindy Wilson, our county representative as well. So, Senator, if you'd like to come forward, I believe you had something that you wanted to do at this point.
Like to invite Ms. Wilson and Ms. Thayer to come up and invite the council to come back. Always good to be here in Williamston, and always even better when we bring you a little help. This is what's called returning money to the taxpayers, for all the taxpayers to enjoy. What we like to do, and this is a check from the Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Department of South Carolina. We like to present it to the city of Williamston to be used every how y'all see fit to aid in the recreation facilities here in town. This is on behalf of myself, Ms. Thayer, and along with Ms. Wilson's help. We're always glad to work together to try to bring things back to our towns and our cities. And we'd like to present y'all with this check, just for that, I think it's $5,000.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
On behalf of the town, we say thank you very much. This is much needed help. As you know, our recreation property is owned by the school district, so we can't directly spend money on that. We can't spend tax dollars on property we don't own. We can't even apply for grants to improve properties we don't own this town. So this is a very welcome help. BJ's already getting his equipment list together so that we can enhance the experience for our little kids here in town. We've got a great youth program here in town. We just really appreciate you guys recognizing that and reaching out to us tonight. Thanks so much.
We appreciate what y'all do.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Again, thank you to our legislative delegation for their help with our recreational program, and I know the kids here in town will certainly appreciate that. I know I do. Okay, at this time, we have Mr. Adam Chandler with Red City Planning. He's going to give us a presentation, retail and residential strategy plan for us. And he's been working on this for about a year, so this is a very deep dive into Williamston. Adam, how long do you think your presentation is going to go?
I think I've cut it to about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And if I get close to that, somebody just hit the light and I'll exit. If there's somebody, if there's some other groups that have some things to say, I'm fine waiting until they're done. If that's-
Okay. All right, can we introduce, right quick, can we introduce Jamie Baldwin and his crew, Reigns on Main? We'd like to bring you guys up, if you would. So, this is our guys.
Jeff Raines. This is my wife.
Appreciate you guys being here tonight, and we have had a very exciting announcement with Reigns coming to town, and so if you guys would like to talk about that just a little bit, we're all ears.
And we're all excited, to be here. We've been working on this for over a year now, trying to get it going. A little bit about us, our concept of, we try to bring kind of an upper class feel with middle class price. $11.99 less is our core menu. We'll offer a full bar, catering. We'll have a party room there. As far as the impact that the town's going to have on us, and we can have on them, if it's anything like our others, we'll probably run about a $275,000 payroll that comes, to this town. So it's just little things like that. We're excited to be here.
That's no little thing, let me tell you. For me, when you hear about an investment in our town like that, and the jobs that that'll create, and moving the bar up to what's here in Williamston, that's exactly the path we want to be on. So you guys are part of our future, and I just want to congratulate you and welcome you to Williamston tonight.
Well, thank you. We're very excited. Thank you.
Okay, now at this time, we'll have Adam Chandler to do his presentation. And Adam, let me just say off the top, I appreciate the depth that you have dove into the data and into what Williamston's all about, and getting a professional opinion about what our future could look like and directions that are possible for us. Of course, this will continue to be a discussion. This is our presentation to council tonight. And so this is really a springboard for us to have more discussion and move forward and start to prioritize some projects.
I have a presentation that's already in the computer there. Might already be low. I just need to turn the projector on. While that's going on, as the Mayor said, my name is Adam Chandler with Red City Planning. I've been working here in Williamston almost a year to the day. See if we get that all the way on.
You'll need to cut off the line, just that one row of lines back there. You can see it. Yeah, I'll check it.
It's just coming in.
There we go.
Can y'all see that okay? Can you guys see that okay out there?
So
Advance the slides. You got that?
this project and this program has been in combination with the City of Williamston, Vision Williamston, and the Appalachian Regional Appalachian Regional Commission, who supplied the grant, which was paid for half of this to make this possible. And I just want to say up front, thanks to several groups. First of all, the City of Williamston, Envision Williamston, of course, the Appalachian Regional Commission, former Director Sonia Crandall, who I think had a lot to do with putting this program together and still administered this, and everyone else in town who was open and sharing about a lot of information. I dived pretty deep into some questions that were probably personal. They were willing to share the answers, which made a big difference. As the mayor said, it's true, I did go pretty pretty far into the data around Williamston, but I knew going into this, and my experience told me in the past, that the real data is in the people and in the relationship between people. Most property in towns like Williamston are tied up with, just a couple of families, and figuring out what can be done where is kind of the key thing. And while the plans that I put together, I'm very proud of them, took a lot of time, and they will be very useful to the city, and not only the plans, but the studies that go along with them. If anybody wants to pull any of those up at any time, you go to my website, redcityplanning.com, under the cities tab, Williamston, and you can download any and all those plans from there. And if you want to fall asleep quick, that is an excellent reading list for you. But tonight, we're going to be talking about the retail and the residential action plan, which is the culmination of this program. So let's just go to the project in one slide. It breaks down that's every study and every plan that's been done for this, including the engagement process that we've had with the community, which was interesting due to COVID. But the residential side was designed to cover the residential development, tourism, and attracting new residents. The retail side of this was designed for retail development and light industrial development. Now, it sounds like it would be a no-brainer that this is how all studies and all consultation with cities about economic development should be done, but it's not. This is unique in my experience and a much better way to go about doing things. I think the city of Williamston is kind of trailblazing, so to speak, when it comes to this type of program. And it's been the most successful program I've ever been a part of, only because it allowed me, it gave me the latitude, the time, and the finances to actually attack economic development from a whole perspective and not just a retail side, which is what usually most cities want me to come in and bring in a big box retailer, because it solves a lot of quick problems when we're talking about finances. I mean, a Walmart or a grocery store or whatever. It adds a lot of change to the city pocketbook very quickly, but it doesn't fix the main issue, the underlying issue that towns have to solve when it comes to growing in a smart way that's beneficial on lots of fronts. So, the main findings on the residential side. Fact one, the city's best asset and is most used by the residents is Mineral Springs Park. You didn't need an expert to come in here and tell you that. That's something everybody knows. It's kind of what the city's famous for. It's what the city's founded on. And these facts are culled from our engagement process through several different Facebook surveys before COVID, interviewing people in the streets, and some of the public engagement seminars we had when we could. One of the main things that came up was from especially the Facebook posts was there's just not enough activities in town, especially for kids. It's a big reason that a lot of families with children that are of activity age don't move here or leave here. There are more child-focused activities in other local communities. So that's something that just came up over and over again through the process. And lack of new home development within the city has hindered almost every other aspect of growth within the town. Without new people living here, you're just not going to get the retail you want. You're not going to get the other services you want. It's people in town is the main thing that makes a town a town. So, and on the residential side, we had a quality of life check-in kind of right in the middle of COVID with 211 participants that gave us some great feedback about how they're handling the situation, about their expectations, and really learned a lot about the community through that. And it was, it got very difficult through the pandemic and the lockdown to get the kind of public engagement we wanted to, but this was a great way to get to there. Had a realtor roundtable discussion where we just brought in developers and realtors and talked about what their perception was of Williamston as a town for development, as a realtor working in town, the housing situation as a whole. So we really got some good engagement there as well. On the retail side, fact one, and this is something I've had to change my tune on. When I was hired for this a year ago, everybody said, we need a grocery store, we need a grocery store. I was up front as I could be with them. Not happening. Not enough people. Not enough people. We just don't meet any of the metrics for a major grocery chain right now in Williamston. I've had to change my tune on that, and that's mainly because of growth estimates within the town and just outside of the town have varied wildly in the last 12 months. So in the retail analysis report, I kind of go into depth on this, but so the estimate for Williamston growth over a 4-year period was 110 people. That's what the growth was. My prediction was that number is going to be somewhere between 400 and 500 people in the next 4 years. Now, I think that number is probably extrapolated times 10 within a 3-mile radius of Williamston. So really, we're looking at 3,000 to 4,000 people moving within a 3 to 4 mile radius of Williamston in the near future, within that 4-year period. And that makes a lot of things possible. A grocery store is one of them. And Williamston would be the center point for where that should land. It really should be a goal and an aim of the city to make sure that Williamston is the focal point, because it could be somewhere else. It could be, just east of town out on 80. It could be any of these other locations where it could be easy to just build a development and have a grocery store there, which would service some of Williamston's needs, but it doesn't really service the town the way it is hoping to be serviced.
But Adam, let me ask you, the more homes we have built in Williamston makes Williamston more like the center for that.
So the importance of the weight of homes closer to that center of commerce is weighed more heavily by those chains. So, a 1 mile radius, population within a 1 mile radius is given a lot heavier emphasis than a population within a 5 mile radius, of course. So, yes, the closer it is to the center, to town and in town, the bigger deal it is. Second fact is, and we just saw it, there's about to be a lot of new restaurants in Williamston. It's happening. Supporting those restaurants, making sure that what opens gets the full support of Williamston is going to be huge. The town cannot really withstand a restaurant opening and closing within a year. That's a really bad psychological factor, and it's a bad economic factor. Now, the town can't be it can't be the town's fault if that restaurant is run professionally, it's not done right, but a group like Raines, who we give Jim Simpson a lot of props for working with them well over a year. I remember working with him on that project a long time ago. I never met those guys, but through Jim, giving him letters of intent, letting him know what to expect, helping him try to do that. But Jim fought the long fight through COVID, kept him interested, did what was necessary to make sure the town got that restaurant, because it was important. So, and they are a regional chain. They know what they're doing. That restaurant will be run well and run right. And so they're going to be the ones to benefit from being the first ones here that serve alcohol. They're going to do numbers that's going to blow their socks off. But there's also going to be new fast food restaurants in town. There's going to probably be another bar restaurant in town within a year and a half. It's just, there's enough fires in the iron, enough people looking, enough stuff going on right now that's going to be a reality. The third thing is prime retail space. There's not any good retail space in town. There's a lot of empty retail space, but there's not very much usable retail space. There's people and companies that want to be in Williamston right now, and I have nowhere to put them. There's nothing usable for that has drive-through access, that can be easily convertible, that's up to date, that meets code. It just doesn't exist here right now. And I want to skip to fact 6. One reason that there's a lot of properties in town that aren't up to code. A lot of retail properties in town that are good retail properties, they're just not ready to be inhabited or rented out. And that's something, would like to talk about in more depth, but for tonight's purposes, we're just going to mention that that's the problem. The number of businesses in town, the number of buildings in town that are not up to code, especially retail buildings, is a problem. So I'll skip back to 5 and say the city is not currently prepared to handle the new retail growth or residential growth that's about to happen. What I mean by that is we are having to figure it out as we go when it comes to approving our new residential development or new retail development. The Scout Realty in that deal here, it's great that the city is taking the steps that it is to make that happen, but I think we're seeing a firsthand example of why there should be codified uses for each area, if it's in that zoning area, and then there shouldn't have to be a lot of discussion about it. It's either within that use or it's not. If they want to come for a variance, yes. But the open-ended way that it's kind of designed as right now leaves a lot of room for a lot of drop football, so to speak. I've seen it happen in a lot of cities where development and deals go away because there's more issues at stake than just the development. And so for right now, we're going to have to feel our way through this particular one, but as quick as we can, we really need to tighten that up as far as what can be done where and how that process works. And I will say the current administration needs some credit for, we've already had 2 to 3 meetings on figuring out that process. I know there's a meeting coming up with Anderson because the city's heavily dependent on them and their resources for approving plans. So there's a lot of, there's things already in motion. I think everybody knows this is an issue. It's trying to be corrected, but we're going to have to do a couple of practice runs in real life, and that's what's kind of happening right now. So on the retail side, different public engagement processes through Facebook and in-person meetings, which kind of happened early on. We had about 350 participants, and you wouldn't be shocked to figure out everybody wants a grocery store. That's been the main thing. Everybody really wants restaurants that serve alcohol. That's a big thing. Shopping, retail shopping options weren't super high on the list, not as high as I would have assumed it was, but a place to buy groceries, and really, I really think, and this is just my personal opinion, that the lack of a grocery store in town is much more of a psychological issue than it is an actual need issue. I mean, you can get to Bilo or whatever and get pretty much what you need, but the lack of having a grocery store, a major store in town, it legitimizes the place. And when people don't have the things in town that legitimize it as a town, they feel delegitimized. So I think that need and that want that the city has is legitimate, but not having it doesn't mean the town can't grow. But like I said, I don't think that's going to be an issue for much longer. All right, so let's, real quickly, I want to cover and give some credit to the groups that worked on the 2016 Community Master Plan. It was a very well done plan, had a lot of good ideas, and I did not want any of the plans that I had in this to supersede or outdate or in any way overlap those plans. And I wanted to highlight 5 things that were in those plans that I think are still important and still important things to look at. The first one is moving the Lander Library to a downtown location. It just makes sense on so many levels. They're so making downtown Williamston, bringing more people here and making better use of the space that, Jim Simpson's space there the original process was to have it where MVP pizza is, but, you know, Goodies is not gonna be there anymore. There's other space in that place. Having that library in a central location that has plenty of parking, that's visible with more space, that has more options. I mean, that's not a bad song. That has more options. I think it plays a huge part in making the town and the library more usable and making downtown Williamston more access friendly and more usable as a whole. There's a couple of reasons given why that's not been possible, but I never really consider them to be all that valid. I think if somebody wanted to put some work onto it, we can move forward. Let's see. The next one is, this is a very cheap and easy fix, and it's something that I think the town should look at very quickly. And it was the streetscape improvement in front of Main Street Motors. You know, there's no doubt that that is an eyesore coming in on Williamston's main corridor. Highway 20 coming into town from West Pelzer. This is one of the first properties you run across, and it just does not give a really great image and feel to those visiting the town. And I think the process of actually cleaning up that business as a whole is probably not something that's realistic right now. It's just too much, but just putting some nice trees in front of it along Highway 20 should be an easy fix. It's not a permanent thing, but anything to improve the feel of coming into Williamston for those who are visiting for the first time. I mean, until you get to, you know, Main Street and you make that turn on the Main Street, there's a lot of things that distract your eye in kind of a negative way. And to take inventory of what can be done cheaply to shield that, improve the look of that, I think that's will be money well spent. And I still think that's an idea from that study that's worth spending some money on. This is really something that'll, I think, take care of itself, but it'll be important. You know, the Williamston, this building here, and the building owned by the Mead family, several things have been looked at for that, and over time, it'll be something. The market's going to take care of that. I don't think the two-story building will ever be something that will be able to be occupied as a full building. It's just too cost prohibitive to fix it. And I'm not sure structurally it's sound enough for a second floor, but it should be a great kind of event space, open air event space with no roof on it. There's a lot of things that can happen with that. And it's really one of Williamston's most interesting architectural buildings on Main Street. So every effort should be made. But like I said, I would look for, as the city council, some ideas for how to, for what to be done here. Will probably be brought before you guys before too long. So that's just something to look out for. I know this is something that's already being worked on to a certain extent. Kenny's Home Cooking. I know the owner has been working and putting some money into that building to get it ready for a new tenant, a restaurant tenant. And it might be a good idea for the city to, or Vision Williamston, to see about some facade grants or any other kind of grant to improve that building on the outside. One thing I would add is that the building at the corner, since it's not occupied, having that demolished and parking added would, I think it would make that building and whatever business goes there seem a lot more legitimate, having better signage, you can see it better. You know, right now, that building in front of it doesn't lend itself to somebody who's not very familiar with the area or familiar with the place itself pulling in. It just looks like a second row thing, and I think it'd be a cheap fix that has a big upside to it. Lastly is the Simpson property. I spent a lot of time working on my own plan for this property, and in an attempt to kind of add this property into the action plan. And the 2016 Community Master Plan made some of the same suggestions, or we had similar ideas. At the end of the day, I left diversions off of it just because the city is going to have very little control over what happens there. I wanted these action plans to be something that could be moved on and acted on by the city without having to pull 1,000 pieces together. And I think the Simpson property is going to be, it's going to change much sooner rather than later. And it's kind of just going to be out of the city's hands for what's happening there. Or the city's not going to have to plan it, let's just put it that way. My main issue with the Simpson property is I think it would be very helpful to turn that stoplight into a four-way stop. There's very few four-way stops in Williamston, very few. And the more of those, traffic signal stops. And Mill Street Mill Street and Main should be a four-way signalized intersection. There should be a turnoff into that center from there that connects to the road at the end of that. I know that requires the agreement of a couple different groups. It's my understanding that an agreement was reached to do that at, some point several years ago. It fell through for whatever reason. That needs to be revisited and done for traffic flow, for creating better and more retail space, and more retail land that just is in shortage here. All right, so let's move to the actual action plan itself. And this was done in two different reports, one residential and tourism, one retail and light industrial. So the first one is Mineral Springs Park update, 2, expanded walking trail, 3, minor street residential development, 4, minor street development with a retail option, 5, Mill Street and Main Street corner, and 6 is a light industrial guild and district. So let's look at the map of where all this is happening. And everybody, most of the people in this room are very familiar with all these spots. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but that gives you a chance to just see what's happening. And everything is clustered for a reason. There are other projects that, we looked at possibly planning out, but we felt the biggest bang for the buck for creating something that's going to have a center and create mass for the public and Williamston as a whole and ground the city is all going to be within this 300-yard stretch of Main Street right now. I mean, I think it's where it's happening anyway. And so solidifying this area as special and unique for not only Williamston but the area as a whole was one of the reasons all this is clustered in one area. So the first thing is probably the most important thing. If nothing else comes from this plan, the city needs to realize, and I'm sure you all do, how important Mineral Springs Park is, but I'm not sure you actually do. It's like you have a loved one that you love them, but you don't really understand how important that other person is to you until it's gone, or it's sick, or it's not in the same shape it used to be. And I think Mineral Springs Park is quickly heading in that direction if some serious money and attention is not paid to it. So if nothing else, I think this should be something that the city should put a lot of effort and whatever finances and money can be found behind it. Because it's simple, there's nothing overreaching about this plan. But mainly, the main difference is, if you'll notice where 18 and 19 are on the map up there, we've moved where the current road and parking lot are all the way down to the railroad tracks. We've taken the tennis courts out and replaced that with parking, and we've made where the current road is green space, because there is a lack of green space in the park. The park has a great cozy kind of sheltered feel to it, but there's not a whole lot of just open area within the park itself. And so rerouting traffic, getting rid of the tennis court that I don't think anybody stepped on in 20 years, and it's kind of an eyesore detractor from the park, and using that as a parking area seems like a no-brainer. The basketball court stays pretty much where it is. I think it could probably be expanded to have courts running north, south, and east, west. I've seen, in my time in the park, especially before COVID and you know, this time last year, I noticed that basketball court got a lot of use. It was one thing that I saw being used a lot. And so I think it's something that should be, you know, brought back up to what it could be and expanded if possible. So I'm going to go, but the main change here is moving the road. We also suggest that we close down the entrance and exit here and turn that into emergency entrance and exit only, and create a walking kind of sidewalk off of Main Street from here, just to, and have traffic kind of reroute back out the way it came. Also, in this plan, we've removed the amphitheater, only because we think there's a better opportunity to have a amphitheater in another plan that we'll get to in a second. So we're not just taking out the amphitheater, not hoping to replace it with anything. All the rest of this, and I'm not going to go through each one. You can download the plan and look at them, but basically it's just taking the shelters and the structures that are there and fixing them, making them look better, give them maybe a little more permanence. The one thing kind of a pet peeve is the manger scene here that's become a year-round thing for that building. It's very distracting for somebody that's not from town, that just pulls into the park. You don't understand what's going on. You know, it kind of feels like one of those houses that never take the Christmas lights down. It's just like, it's just kind of distracting. And I look back at some old images where it was just the beige building, and I think it should probably just go back to that. You know, somebody did a good job painting it as the major scene, and I understand it's like, oh, we don't want to do this every year, but for 360 days out of the year, it feels pretty odd. One other thing, and never really could come up with a solid idea of how to address this, but I think it's something that needs to be addressed and have some thought put in it. There's 4 pipes that run through the stream right there at the park, and they're very noticeable pipes. Some of them look way out of date as far as how they're run and done, and I don't have an answer for this one, but somebody needs to put some more thought into it, because it kind of detracts from what the park could be, especially when that's a great, beautiful stream. It's got, you know, grass growing in it, consistent motion, it's clear, and, you know, if they were just regular pipes that were kind of more modern, I don't think it'd be quite as jarring, but some of these things just kind of stick up and bridge over. I think there's some cheap camouflage fixes that are there for those. So this is more of an auxiliary item in the action plan. I know there's been a lot of discussion and planning over the last couple of years about something being done with Mustang Alley. There's some studies generated that I looked at and, you know, spent a lot of time looking at to see whether or not the Mustang Alley should be part of this plan. And I don't think the city is quite ready for that, but I do think this revitalizing the park produces a really good opportunity to create an entrance to that alley and start the process of carrying that through all the way to Mill Street, which is going to tie in this whole corridor. I just had one idea of just, you know, running a sign or a lit sign across the old railroad tracks over there. I mean, it sets up like a gate anyway, some kind of entrance into that. It's kind of, even without anything there, it's pretty cool. But I thought it'd be a great opportunity for Mevo Williamston or some other end of the city to involve the community, creating an art project, creating some kind of lasting art installation there to solidify that entrance into Mustang Alley. So while that's not something I think the city's totally ready to do, I think it's putting one part of the plan together, it should lead to the next, and so that would be the next. So in each of these plans, there is a action item list, a timeline list, and I could stay here, if I really went over each one of these, it'd be a very long presentation. So, once again, encourage you to download and look at it on your own. But it is, all those items are designed to take you step by step into making these things reality. The next thing is probably the most aggressive item in any of the plans, and it is expanding the current walking trail by about 45 acres, actually, all the way to the watershed of that Ida Tucker Road. I think, you know, somebody not from Williamston that just came here, I found myself just standing and looking at this property over and over. I think it's probably the most beautiful property in Williamston. It has open air spaces, it's probably one of the highest properties in Williamston as well, at its peak up top. And it wasn't until I realized that there's only about 3 different owners of property separating all this, that, you know, the walking trail itself, I've walked it I don't know how many times, and I just kept wanting to go. I hate that I had to stop right there. It just bothered me. I just thought the opportunity to explore and get out was there. And so I, you know, kept looking at this thing from an aerial standpoint, and, you know, like, most of this property is locals. It can't be developed anywhere. You know, it has very little residential value. Especially the stuff, you can see where the blue line goes, following that tree line there, that's all low area, it's all in a floodplain. So the development side of that has very little value. But the value to the community as an open air space is huge. Now, this is just an outline of what's possible. Whether or not all that property has possibility to be had, I don't know. But I think there's some very good cases to be made to the landowners there that donating that property to the city would have a massively beneficial effect to their property development-wise. So having a trail back to your property that fronts either Cherokee Road or Ida Tucker Road, I think it instantly increases the value and development potential for that property. It's also some property I think needs to be protected. I mean, open air space is going to be huge. Who knows what these COVID protocols are going to be in the future, how long they're going to last. But what we know right now is being outside is always good. Right now, and maybe for the foreseeable future, being outside is mandatory. And so being able to provide as much open air space for events and things like that, there's no downside to it. You know, if we're suggesting building lots of indoor space, there could be some real downside to that if, you know, our patterns of people and society change because of infectious diseases. This is a good thing no matter what. So very late in the game, after I had already had this kind of drawn out, I was busy trying to figure out how much it's going to cost to tear down the old water treatment plant. But at that point, I already did want to move the amphitheater to right here, to give people a reason to, en masse, get down, at least this far down the trail. That clear water well there creates a natural amphitheater right there. And the stage is built, the natural amphitheater is there. So the idea of tearing down the one in the park and kind of creating that one there and giving people a reason to get this far down the trail and explore is one of the reasons that I had removed it from the other one. With the brewery and the potential restaurant there, it's a game changer. Like I said, it happened very late in the process of doing this, and I think the brewery is 50-50, whether or not that's a reality. I'll be very upfront. There's a lot of moving parts to that project. If it happens, it literally changes Williamston overnight. I think you're looking at 2,500 to 3,000 people a weekend here for that thing. It's huge. I just know with the development experience I have, it is not a simple process to take something that has never been done before, in my knowledge, and repeat it. It's just, you can't reinvent the wheel cheaply and or easily. And so while I want this project to work, I think the city should be cautiously optimistic. Do whatever's possible to help these guys move the project along. But there's a lot of hurdles that they don't even see, just can't. There's just too many moving parts to it. So if this is going to be a reality, I think it's at least, 6 months before we know. But I will say this about that project. In my mind, I had it being torn down. I thought it was just a liability. I think now these guys have shown that it has a value, it has a use. It's just going to take a little money and some creative ideas to make use of it. I think it's better than just tearing that project down all the way to the ground. But regardless, this plan exists with or without the brewery. It was designed for the brewery, and the brewery only enhances it, but it's just as good without it. So the brewery is just a huge bonus for me, but it doesn't change why I had this here or why it was developed to begin with. So if we look at the tax map, you can see the majority of the property necessary would be the Bagwell Family Partnership. The only property that has, in my opinion, real development value as far as residential development value is number 1 up here, which is on the watershed. If for whatever reason we're not able to acquire that, and the walking trail has to peter out here to Ida Tucker Road, it's still an adventure as opposed to a walk at this point. And what I'd like to eventually see is this tying in somehow, some way into this network of bike trails and walking trails that have developed through upstate South Carolina over the last decade. The people that ride those, walk those, they travel for money. They'll go places where these trails exist. Being tied into that network, I think, is going to be like being tied into the internet was 20 years ago. Being part of that biking community, being part of that group that gets places without using a highway or back road or cars. Finding a way to tie into that would be a big part of moving this plan to the next stage. But for right now, this is aggressive, and this is, I think the park, the Mineral Springs Park, has this protected, cozy feel to it. This represents to me adventure, being outside, things happening, exciting, exploring, and getting to explore for more than 100 yards. It's going to take you a minute to do this. It'll be exercise. And all the things that could go within this expanded walking trail, there's too many to name. And if it gets to where we can actually plan that, I think that's where you let the public come in. What do you want? You want exercise stations? Do you want community gardens? There's so many options that are there that I think you let the public and the people decide what they want there. But giving them this full option is really exciting. I think it's doable. I really do. I think you can make solid arguments to the landowners to make this happen, and the rest is just putting the trail out there. So, acquiring the property and figuring out what can be acquired at a reasonable price or for donation is huge. But like I said, I think anybody that owns property along this trail that has frontage on another road, as somebody that knows a lot of developers, that becomes a huge benefit and a plus, which I think is going to lead us into our next project, which is the Minor Street development. This Minor Street development featured in both the residential and the retail part of the planning process. This was something I kind of saw from the first month that I was here. Walked out the side door of City Hall, and I'm like, there's all that property that backs right up to the walking trail, has all this road frontage on a heavily used road, has the ball fields on the other side of it. This is a great spot for a high-density, single-family residential development. putting a lot of homes within 100 yards of Main Street adds the potential for foot traffic on Main Street immediately. I think, and also the people that would be looking at this type of home, it's probably going to be younger people. Younger people that are active or older empty nesters that are active. I think it really brings some new lifeblood in the town to have this type of product available. And the city owns a great deal of this property. It's broken up into 3 phases. Phase 1 starts from the back of David Mead's property here where the paper printer is. The College Street, that's phase 1. Phase 2 basically is on the other side of College all the way up to here. And then phase 3, the city owns all that property, which is where the city currently has a lot of their work trucks there. What I've thrown down here is just, it's not a bad design actually. I mean, it combines a lot of green space with a lot of houses close together and green space in between them. It's not I would not call it a true pocket neighborhood, but it's not far from it. Now, of course, a residential land planner would have to be brought in, or whoever's developing this would have their own planner brought in. I think the city's main responsibility in this would be determining how it looks, what amenities would need to be brought in. I think this is a very different project than, say, the Mahaffey Road project. The Mahaffey Road project is, we need houses. Let's put houses here and establish a baseline of what houses sell for it, new homes sell for here in Williamston, which is maybe the most important thing that can happen right now, just to establish that baseline. This is going to be something that the city should have a lot more say in and a lot more care in. The sidewalk and streetscape should be mandatory, should be lit sidewalks. The architecturally, whatever's built there should have a higher standard than just minimum. It doesn't need to be the billboard or even close to it, but there should be some architectural demands there that create a look and feel for this space, because it's so close to the heart of town and will be, in my opinion, the premier project probably within 5 to 10 mile radius if this is done. There's no other project I can think of within Belton, Pels or West Pels or anything like it that has a 60-acre walking trail behind it, ball fields on the other side of it, and are right on Main Street. I mean, I think you'd have a lot of interested parties from possibly Greenville, Anderson, who would much rather come here and pay, 25% less than they're going to pay in those markets, or even in Powdersville, they're going to be paying that much more. So I think this project has the potential to throw, 150, 250 new homes, depending on how high a density we want to pack in there. Once again, this project's good with or without the brewery. I think it works right now as it is. It's just a matter of putting that property together. Like I said, the city owns a good bit of it here, all of that here, some of this property here, probably half of it. But the next part of this, the retail component, probably is heavily reliant on whether or not the brewery is a reality. So this is basically the same plan, but phase 1 is now a retail center and parking in the back, which I think a small retail center, 5,000 to 7,000 square feet, definitely fills up there. It solves one of our main problems, which is lack of new retail space that has the potential for a drive-through. We probably get some pushback because it's not on Main Street. Without the brewery and that activity that the brewery would bring in, I could definitely see it would not be as well received from retailers or users as if it was not on Main Street and that it is not fronting that brewery. But if the brewery is going to be a reality, it's going to have a lot of parking that's going to be shared between retail center, the city, people walking on Main Street, people at the brewery. Like I said, I expect a lot of people here on the weekends, that's a real thing. They're gonna need to park. My opinion, and I've already talked to Richard Greer and Chris about this, is if y'all are in the middle of putting the brewery together, you guys need to try to tie up the property in phase one. This needs to be your guys' project. And you need to be responsible for, creating that parking, that retail. I don't think, I think the city should help them any way possible. I think there should be no problem giving them property that the city already has, which has a large building that's dilapidated on it that nobody really knows what to do with. Handing that off to somebody that has a great idea and potential to do it, yeah, do it all day long. Buying property and then making it part of it, I don't think so. I think that should be on the developer to put that together. And so I've already told them that, that's something, if you guys are going to do that, if you think the brewery is a reality, tie these properties up, close on them, make it part of your project. And that solves a lot of problems because it doesn't really change anything in regards to the development. I mean, it just adds a new layer to it, which I think is great. This one other thing about this slide is this requires the city to probably put a pretty good chunk of money into updating College Street, widening it, and also it needs to be lined up in Town Center Street that comes out right behind here would have to be lined up with College Street. You can't. It'll be far too busy to have these two these two roads within 30 yards of each other. It just makes a lot more sense to move this over about 30 yards and make a four-way stop. That's one thing that is not shown in this plan, but I think that would be key. And this one thing here, like I said, the brewery makes a difference. I think without the brewery, the other option is a lot better. But both these options are going to require a developer and a partnership with the developer to some extent because the city owns some of this property, which I think is key because I think the city should have, that's really the only way the city's going to have the amount of architectural and creative control over what happens on this property. This is something that the city should protect. I mean, it's where I kind of take my developer hat off and put on the let's protect the city hat, and because this is going to be long-term heart of Williamston property, and it should look good for a long time. So that's those two projects right there. One of the last ones is this 1 acre on Mill Street. It's the current Mustang car wash. And this is, like I said, it's one of the only single corner retail spots that's available in Williamston. The other one's owned by Sphinx, that they're not going to sell it. Hopefully they're going to be doing a new store there in the near future. I've talked to them a couple of times. They've gone from, we got no plans to, maybe. And they really do kind of operate, I don't know if they roll dice over there to figure out what project they're doing next. They have kind of an interesting way of doing things. But, so this property right here is owned by one person. The property around it is owned by the church. But without anything else happening, and without tearing a building down, it's been there a long time, I think there's a real opportunity for something cool and unique to happen here. And the one reason I think this property is so important is it ties in everything else and it turns it back into Main Street. So we create this loop of interesting activities and places within Williamston that all are circular. You're at Mineral Springs Park, you can walk all the way to Mustang Alley, you come out here to Mill Street, you have what I'm going to propose is like the restaurant bar right there. You walk back up to Main Street, and you're back in, it moves together. So this building, as it stands now, and I'm using an example of the Universal Joint because they're one of the best at doing this that I've seen. taking an old, and that building on the upper left, it's almost exactly the same building that's there right now. It's an old gas station, same amount of bays. That's just what it looks like redone. The back is a rendering that I had done of what it, could potentially look like in the back from Mill Street. But Universal Joint is just a simple restaurant bar that makes use, that has figured out how to make use of these old gas stations. And these old gas stations sit at a lot of key intersections in a lot of cities, and they're not torn down because of potential environmental damage that's in these properties. So if you tear the building down, you really have to deal with it. If you can work with the building that is there, it is a workaround to make, something old usable and new. And like I said, the Universal Joint's done this in Clayton, Georgia. I think they got one in Knoxville, Greenville, and a couple of other areas. But I've seen private people do this. It's not rocket science to turn that building into it. In fact, it's not cheap, but it's, when you talk about building a restaurant from scratch, it's very doable. You also have the green space in the back, which I would like to see owned by the same person that owns the restaurant, just so they could have open air seating, tables. Once again, be outside. The ability to be outside might be the make it or break it thing for a lot of restaurants or any kind of establishment moving forward. So having that ability to be outside and also being kind of the endpoint for where Mustang Alley feeds out into brings this whole thing full circle. Now, I've talked to the owner a couple of times now, and I've expressed that I think this is the best idea for the city. From the city standpoint, and from what meeting the city's needs that we've discussed and we've talked about is this. I think this project here does that. But I told him there's going to be other options for him that are going to be brought to him, and I wanted the city to be aware of what those options probably were. I mean, let's see. This is a fast food layout. I told him I could have that probably done for him in a couple of months. Several fast food users are looking in Williamston right now. This is the corner. This is the corner they would want to be on. That's just a simple layout of what that probably looks like from an aerial perspective. So this meets some of the city's needs, having more restaurant opportunities. Not a terrible thing. It's probably not the best thing for that corner of the city. But once again, I don't see how the city really has any say in that, just because it's not the city's property, it's commercial use, and if that happens to be the case, it's not the end of the world. But I would say it might be a missed opportunity by not encouraging or looking at ways to make the other thing happen. Lastly is a retail center, which I think this, if you can't have the restaurant bar concept, I think this is probably the best second runner-up, just because of the lack of space in town. It gives you the ability for a drive-through. This would probably be better if the current owner could pick up a couple more feet of road frontage to make this a little larger retail center. But it works as is. You can work with it as it is. But I think this really opens up having something that looks like that in town that's new and can be easily convertible for lots of different uses, brings instant retail into the city. But it just doesn't exist right now. So that's kind of the three options that I see happening there. And my talks with the owner, he's ready to do something. He's willing to do something. I think he realizes that time's ticking, and he wants to see something happen. So it's good that having ownership that's willing to move forward is half the battle. And it's one of the battles that it's been a long process of doing this, but really it takes a full year to get people in the same room with you, to talk to them, to figure out what their issues are, But key property being available takes care of half the problem. So, the last thing, and this is maybe the most kind of creative idea, And it was something that was almost a reality pre-COVID. Myself and the former Envision Williamston director, Tony, was working with Sam Byler and Terry Field, who is a local cabinetry carpenter. I think it was Terry who had approached Tony about asking about space to do his cabinet business was in his backyard. He'd run out of room, needed something more. And I had heard about this type of concept in the past, and we were looking at ways to try to fill up what was not really usable retail in Williamston. Some of the spaces in Jim Simpson Center, some of the other empty areas. And the idea of, and I also knew Sam Byler, who runs the PBA, was a handy guy that's into a lot of stuff. And I was like, I called him into that meeting, and him and Terry hit it off. He's in a pot, talking about all this stuff, and we actually got as far as looking at property and trying to figure out how to structure this. And what this is a collective of craftsmen, artisans, and makers sharing space, tools, and other resources. The collective would produce unique items to sell online and locally. This would produce a place that will bring people from outside of Williamston to observe, participate, and shop. And it also opens it up to learning, skill sharing, job preparation. There's a lot of positives that comes from this type of creative endeavor. We actually talked to 3 different groups, and the full report has the interviews in there with them. I didn't want to go through all that right now, but asking the same question: how's the space funded? How successful has the shop been? Is there a retail component? How did the company start? Some of these are operated as companies, some of these are operated as nonprofits. All of them had a median success rate as far as, the break-even money went. But they were all very enthusiastic about what was happening in community involvement and the potential that they saw with it. Now, our hope was this would create a unique retail opportunity in Williamston, light industrial retail opportunity where people are coming here to buy products they can't get anywhere else, and you can watch them make it. An idea and reality is not the same thing. Everybody that does anything like this has figured out you make your money selling online now. But just having a space where people can come see a glass blower or a cabinet maker or a blacksmith, I think that has value, and I think it's worth pursuing. Once we kind of figure out where this Jim Simpson spot wasn't going to work for various amount of reasons, and really what stopped this process in its tracks, the pandemic, COVID, nobody really understanding how things are going to be moving forward for a long period of time, that came to a stop. But I have a feeling it could be picked back up. The main obstacle is figuring out where to put it. And this little section of Williamston has always bothered me since I got here. William Street to Mill Street. It's a collection of buildings that are all empty and all weird. When I say weird, I mean they kind of don't lend themselves to anything else. It's hard to take any of these buildings and repurpose them for something else. I think one used to be a boys' home. One was, this golf store. And this part of Williamston really is kind of the delineation, the separation and delineation between Main Street retail and where most of the residential is on the south side of these railroad tracks. It bumps right up against the city's Broad Lane property, which I think is going to have a big impact on the town in the near future as a residential development. But having something in here that's usable and that ties this area back to the city is, I think, going to really make Williamston a layered town as opposed to a one-street town. So figuring out a way to make use of the buildings that are here, and can these be used for shared space? I think this one, the golf building probably can. This one, I doubt it. Talked to the owner of this, and they don't really know what to do with it. I think it's a really good candidate for a bulldozer, and some new ideas with it. But figuring out a way to put this light industrial collective or guild in this space, I think is a good way to start branding this area as a maker space, or light industrial district, or technology center district. You know, it doesn't really have an identity right now, and it needs one. And this collective is a good place to give that kind of identity. More than likely, a better building shows up somewhere else in town. And if that's the case, take it. This is just an idea of what this possibly could be, and some acknowledgement that this area exists, and it needs to be something. It needs to have a identity. And this idea is going to take a group of people willing to chase it down for at least a year and decide whether or not it's real or not. It might not be. It might be pie in the sky. But I saw it get far enough along that I think it could be real, and I think it could be unique to the city. All right, so that wraps up the plan, both plans. And honestly, the people that were in the Division Williamston can tell you, this is about an hour shorter than I got the other night. So I didn't even cover half the information. It really is going to require the people that are interested to look at the plans, dive into them. You know, you'll find questions in there, and if you have them, I'm always available to answer them. But, you know, just to wrap it up, you guys are sitting in a very exciting moment for Williamston. I mean, this town has been waiting for 50 years or more for the development that's about to happen. I'm very excited to say I had something to do with it. I didn't have hardly anything at all, as close to everything to do with it. A little percentage of just getting this thing kick-started. I was happy that I had the chance to play a part in that and to see it coming alive. I think if I'd had anything, it was seeing what's possible when you guys had been, I think you had seen the same thing for way too long, and now it's possible. So I just want to say thank you for letting me be a part of that. Would love to play whatever part I can in the future of making this or any other thing happen. I'm always open to a phone call. If you need information, the city needs anything from me, I'm available for it. I've really developed a love for this town and, you know, connection to this town. So please let me know if there's anything else you need. If there's any questions right now, I'd be happy to answer. Yeah. What's 2 West 4th? What is, which property?
2 West 4th Street.
That is not me that condemned it. It
I'm
is,
just saying the city condemned it for whatever reason it is, but, my thing is, y'all tell me that it was a 3 little junction box, with a hard bed, and a wall, those that were in place, and everything else.
I think that's a totally separate issue, and if you'd like to discuss that, I'll be happy to do that. But we're taking questions on the presentation right now, so if you would focus, I'm sorry?
When we about to do it, everything is done by that, we can have it. I'm running out of time.
Okay. Well, I'll be glad to meet with you tomorrow, okay?
What time?
Well, let's make it Wednesday. Tomorrow's our voting day, so what time are you available?
Whatever you need, man.
Okay. Well, let's make it at 8 a.m.
But just make sure that day comes, then days don't count against me on my time back.
8 a.m. Wednesday morning, okay?
Adam, I've got a question for you if you don't
yes, sir.
mind. So originally, our trails plan had ran up Minor Street, at least the overall concept of our trails would go up Minor Street, interface with the schools, the walking tracks, and the trail and stuff at the school, then head down Depot toward Pelzer, and maybe West Pelzer, down toward the river.
Yep.
Can you explain why you shifted from that? Was there any advantage or disadvantage?
I want to tie back into that, back down Ida Tucker. So once the trail gets to Ida Tucker, you know, ideally, in the future, we tie back into that trail, going back down Ida Tucker and pick it back up there. But
Was you looking specifically toward more green space, forest, that type of stuff, as opposed to just going down a roadway?
I was looking at the best property in Williamston as far, visually speaking, and I wanted to protect it.
Okay.
And I saw an opportunity for that to be something other than a residential development. And I think it's, you know, I'm not sure if the owner, you know, the owner will be willing to sell or donate any of that property up on the knoll higher. But wanted to like take a picture of Williamston, of like its most idyllic spot and its highest spot that kind of spreads out over the city, it's right there. And I just saw it, of what could be there. And I think that the trails plan that was in place, I like that plan. And I think this can tie back into it in the future fairly easily. But the opportunity there is now to grab that property and make it protected and usable for everybody in the city. And I think it'd be used by a lot more people in the city. You'd have a lot of people come just to be a part of that.
And that basically follows the creek line all the way back out to the reservoir.
And like I said, ending that at the reservoir would be a great cherry on top, because it's not, if that can't happen, I think the rest of it still should. Anything else? All right, you all, like I said, you know how to find me, and I'm always available to take questions from anybody, all right?
All right.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. We appreciate your time this evening. Great presentation. A lot of work gone into that, and certainly do appreciate the professional opinion on what we have as far as opportunities and the forecast for our immediate future. So thank you so much. At the end of this presentation, we will move on to our old business, which is a second reading on an ordinance approving an agreement with Scout Development. Do we hear a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion by Councilman Alexander. Do we have a second? I'll make a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed. Thank you, gentlemen. I guess just as a little discussion, we do want to remind everyone that this is a movement that will allow us to get this into the Planning Commission's hands and to allow any kind of public comment at that level, and then we'll bring this back for final consideration by council. We're very excited to have Chris with us tonight. Chris, is there anything that you'd like to say about the potential development?
Well, I did want to sort of add to some of what Adam was discussing. I spent a little bit of time working for the biggest production builder in the state, D.R. Horton. I was their land and development guy some number of years ago. And the way they always identified sites was basically they looked at the statistics and said, I want to be as close to this top-selling community as possible. They were very scared to ever step out and go to a new location. And I took, I guess, a lot of what I'd learned there, but maybe did some stuff a little bit different. And one of the first developments I did when I got out of D.R. Horton, I went involved the last 20 lots that ever been developed in Woodruff. They'd been done back in '84 and it sat there. Community sold a little bit and then for whatever reason quit selling. And I bought the last 20 lots, and I think I maybe bought them for $8,000 each. And I brought in a builder. We did 20 sales in that community in about 9 months. And I went back there not long ago and looked. There was a piece of property behind it that another developer bought. They're doing another 92 lots. D.R. Horton's come in and they've done 100 and something lots in about 2 years. And Ryan Holmes is in there. What they saw another builder going in there, and they're looking at velocity of sales. And they said, hey, if they can do it, we're better than them. We're going to go in and we'll do the same thing. So I do think if you can get some rooftops up and show like D.R. Horton and those guys, hey, we can do, because again, a little bit of what they track is schools. And the schools here are actually good schools. And they see that on there. They go to greatschools.com is what they look at. And the scores over here are actually pretty good. So that's a checkbox. So then if they see somebody having success, they will follow and they'll keep creeping closer and closer and closer. And you guys will be the beneficiary of that. So I hope what we do can help jumpstart that the same way it did at Woodruff. And Woodruff, I don't know if anybody knows Lee Bailey. He's the city administrator. He's been pounding the pavement, getting new restaurants and getting, trying his hardest to get new businesses into that location. And they do have, I think, a little bit of benefit of being a little bit closer to a bigger job base, but it's kind of chicken or the egg, and I think this is something that can help jumpstart.
Well, we we are certainly excited about it. Appreciate you being here with us this evening, and we're excited to see this go to the next level, and I'm sure we'll be talking with you more about this. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Chris. All right, moving on to new business, we have first reading of an ordinance adopting amended flood prevention regulations. Attorney Cole has sent out information to us on this. It's, some of these are quite lengthy documents. Lee, let's make a motion to bring this to consideration of council. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Haygood. Lee, would you give us some explanation, and if you'd like to just go through and kind of give us an overview of this series of first readings that we're going to have for council, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilman. The first three ordinances that are before you for first reading tonight concerning flood prevention. This first ordinance would completely replace our current chapter 42, which deals with floods in our code of ordinances. It's very similar to the previous version of chapter 42, but with some updates. It's based on the model ordinance that FEMA requires for participants in the National Flood Insurance Program, which the town is. Anderson County has adopted basically the same ordinance, and so this would be asking the town to adopt it, say just an updated version of what we already have. The second ordinance that will come up before you in just a minute will be to adopt the flood survey from 2017. That is I think about 200-page document that I emailed to you. That's for the entire Anderson County and contains the information for Williamston. So that was done by FEMA, dated 2017, and that's just the town officially adopted and accepting that. That's another requirement to be a participant in the National Flood Insurance Program. And then finally, an ordinance approving an intergovernmental agreement with Anderson County. Anderson County has acted as our local administrator for a number of years for flood permits, and this would just continue that, and it would continue to act as that with no cost to the town.
Okay, do you have any further discussion on the first reading of ordinance to adopt the amended flood prevention regulations? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed. Our next item of business is an ordinance adopting the flood insurance study dated December 21st, 2017. Motion approved by Councilman Alexander, second by Councilman Burgess. Do you have any discussion on this item of business? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you, gentlemen. We'll approve that on first reading. Our next item of business is the ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with Anderson County regarding flood prevention. A motion by Councilman Alexander. Have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Haygood. Any discussion on the intergovernmental agreement? Call the question. All in favor? And we have that approved on first reading. Okay, the last item of business that we have is a resolution approving the sale of 600 Parker Street. This was discussed in our work session. Make a motion that we approve this resolution entitled, "A Resolution Approving the Terms of Sale of Real Property at 600 Parker Street." Lee, do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Councilman Haygood. Do we have any discussion, or would council desire any clarification by attorney? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? It's so approved. Thank you for that business this evening, gentlemen. Appreciate you being in attendance at our meeting. We do have an announcement by proxy, I think. Mr. Cole?
Mayor and members of council, I would like to announce on behalf of the parade, Christmas parade in Sheridan Sherry Cole. She couldn't be here tonight, but wanted me to announce that the parade will be on December the 13th at 3 p.m. And there will be information forthcoming about signing up for the parade and all that. But we're going to go ahead and announce that date, December 13th at 3 p.m.
Thank you so much. All right. We hope everybody will get out and vote tomorrow, and at this time, we'll make a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Alexander. All in favor to adjourn? So done.